now we begin our short tour around the park, because park is also not so large as you can imagine, but it's one of the largest parks in our city. And all these parks were created by the famous American architect who was called the father of landscape architecture in the United States, Frederick Olmsted. It's very famous architect who created all this beauty. And if you first, this is for you. So if you first see this park, you don't say if it was created artificially, but all these trees, all these ponds, it was all done according to design of Frederick Olmsted. And actually it looks like little bit of forest. And why is it? Because it's called English landscape parks. And in 18th century, architects in England, they decided that it's nice to see parks which will look like a natural forest. Because before this, there were very nice parks in France, in England, in Germany, where you can see trees that were planted in straight rows. They were cut in different forms and shapes, and they look artificial. And this look like nature. And he not only did this, he also tried to find trees which will, look like evergreen, everlasting park. So, and when there is flowering period, you also see how nice it looks. And when he first came to this place, he was fascinated by the natural landscape. So he saw these rocks, he saw the swamp, and it actually was a swamp here, and he decided that he can do a nice park. And now we can go further and see what was done, because this park actually was created due to the efforts of 7 people. 2 were mayors, first 2 mayors of this city, 4 were architects, and 1 was a journalist who actually was called father of Massachusetts park system. And this guy was a very interesting person. If there were no him, there were no any park maybe in our Boston area, because he was like idea, designer, constructor. He was so fascinated by parks in Europe, where he studied during his youth, that he decided that Boston should have its own park system. And he found a guy who was the son of Harvard president for 40 years. The name of the guy was Charles Eliot, and this guy was landscape architect. And they were like co-partners in crime. So together they created Massachusetts park system, and they found people like Frederick Olmsted and his sons and some others who actually created parks around the great Boston area. And due to his efforts, Olmsted came to our city. And in our city in Malden, we have 15 objects, including 9 parks that were created by Olmsted and his sons. And they as I told at the very beginning, they are small gems in emerald necklace of Boston, which was designed by Frederick Olmsted. And if you don't know about him, maybe before, I can tell that if you were ever at Niagara Falls, or Yosemite Park, or Central Park in New York, and many other places around this country, this great country, all these great parks were created by Frederick Olmsted, and also his sons, who created 5,000 parks, and also grounds for many famous universities such as Berkeley, Stanley, and many others. So you can see all this beauty around the country created by 3 people of 1 family. Okay, so now you can see the pond. And actually, when it was not a pond, but some wooden area with a small, amount of water, a swamp. So our first mayor, Elisha Converse, bought this piece of land. He just bought because he was one of the largest, but then happened some event which, give him a thought about creating a water supply here. What happened? He had the largest rubber shoe factory in a state. And this factory was very prosperous, very successful. But after the fire in 1875, his factory nearly burned out. So he decided that he needs a water supply in case of another fire. And that's why he deepened this place, and there was pipeline to his factory in our city. Later he built another factory in Melrose, and it's still standing there. You can see now they plan to make a Converse there. So Elisha Converse was the largest benefactor of our city. He made so many things for our city, including the hospital, which was closed, but you know, it's up the hill. And he, together with his successor, the second mayor of Malden, John Sleeper, they both donated land. And actually, what is very touching, you know, in this history, the second mayor of Malden, on his deathbed, wrote a will, and he underlined that his land should be used for city park. So he, even on his deathbed, he didn't forget about the native city. And then we can say about the guy who I told at the beginning about Sylvester Baxter, the journalist who did so much for our state. He actually lived very close to this park on Murray Hill Road. And when he went to his job, he often walked through this piece of wood. It was wood here, or forest. And he decided that it will be nice to make a park. So his idea was suggested to Frederick Olmstead and his son. And also Baxter gave the name for the park, Fells, which came from Old Norse, and it means like mountain, and Mare, which means shallow water. And you can see there is a lot of water now. And then came Frederick Olmstead. Frederick Olmstead was a very interesting guy, and his life history deserved a lot of books which were actually written about him. And this guy never dreamed to be a landscape architect. He actually didn't have formal education. He never went to college. He was a farmer, a journalist. He fought against slavery. And during his endeavors, he went to England. And there he met very famous English landscape architect who told him that he was born to be a landscape architect, because he had a lot of ideas about how to create parks, how to plant trees, and so on. And together, when this English architect, his name was Calvert Vaux, he was invited to United States, together they created Central Park in New York. And after this, Frederick Olmstead began to work on his own, and he created these nice parks around the country, which I told you about. And he created his own school of landscape architecture. His two sons developed his ideas, and they have a firm which you can see on the other part of our park. You can see the tag, it's written Olmsted Brothers. It was a very famous architect company. And they worked for many years until the death of the last brother, and even after this, and created 5,000 objects. So when they first came here, what they decided to do, they saw the rocks, they saw the hills, and a lot of trees. But it was all like scattered, real natural woods. So they decided to plant trees which, you know, give you a perspective, which will look very nice. And they used every curve, every, you know, small hill or every lawn. And then they decided to put a path. And afterwards, when we go out, I show you what they decided to do, how to make this park so beautiful. And there were a lot of fish, and there were also fish derbies when around 3,000 fishes were put every summer, or sometimes a few times in the summer, and children could enjoy, not only children definitely, could enjoy fish derby. And there are old postcards of our city where you can see people who feed ducks the same way as people do it now. So you can see they are very nice postcards, and they show this. And they do a lot of food path around the park, and you can see them now. At this period of time, it was very interesting that our park and this boulevard around the park were the first in the country on which were used asphalt. You know, what we stand now. So it was first in the country, first time in the country. So we're pioneers in many ways, we can say. And you can see the beautiful trees, some of them maybe 120 years old, maybe less, but many of them were planted by Olmsted, according to his designs. Some unfortunately fall down because of hurricanes, of age, different causes, but many of them still, you can still see here. And now we will go to the rock and I can tell a little bit more. So now you can see a small bridge beside me, yeah, and you can see the different part, like the small rock where we go in a few minutes. So this pond, and actually there in my book there is a photo how it was all done with people who work on this pond, and they dig this old soil like our public department doing some works now, and they work very fast. Actually these people were very good. They did this park during 4 years. So the design was done in 1893, but the works were finished in 1899. And there was delay of 1 year because of the mayor of this period of time. They were mayor, and mayor were usually elected for 1 year. And one of the mayors were opposite. He didn't want to spend money for planting trees, for making some kind of park work. So that's why there was 1 year delay. But actually people began to come here when it was all in a process. There were no, policemen that tell you don't go there. So it was all open to public. And when it was 1899, there was a huge event in the city. There was 250th anniversary of Malden. And it was celebrated with a lot of guests. It was, I think, maybe 1,000 guests from Massachusetts, from different cities in our country and also abroad, from Malden, UK. And also 2 presidents, the president of this period of time, McKinley, and future 26th president, Theodore Roosevelt, sent their congratulations to our mayor. And many events took place here in this park. There were a lot of water sport events, and people, were so cheerful, so lucky that they had their own park for these events. Okay, so now we are on the rock, and I think this rock may be brought here by, period of ice age, when you were huge, moving of mountains and piece of, earth and whatever. But you can see the stones, they really look like very old stones. So, and you can see the other part of the pond, and there you can see when we go down, you can see fontaine, which is working. And I want to say a few words about fontaines. These fontaines were idea of Anthony Spadafora, who the grandfather of, Council Craig Spadafora. So he actually wanted to make something nice for this park, and you can maybe agree with me that with fontaines it's looked much nicer. And he went to 2 governors of our state. First was the governor who signed the bill about creating fontaine. It was Governor Herter. And 2 years later, Governor Forcala signed the next bill about dedication of these fontaines to veterans of World War II and Korean War. And these fontaines were created for purifying water, because water actually were a little bit, dirty and whatever. So it was also done in, we can say, in sanitizing purposes, not only for beauty. And you can see the famous Fellsmere East. And this actually was created also by Olmstead brothers. We have 2, Fellsmere Boulevard, Fellsmere East and Fellsmere West. And they included in National Register, because according to one of the landscape architects, when you plant a boulevard like this, it can consider a park. So they consider this a continuation of Fellsmere Park. And they are really beautiful. They go all the way to Middlesex Fells. Middlesex Fells Reservation, also created by Olmstead. So, and also other way is go to the Great Boston area. It connects with Emerald Necklace of Boston. I can tell you that people who worked for the city at the end of 19th century, they were very diligent, very dutiful, and they left so nicely written city reports that they can be read like a book, like some kind of a novel. because when you read all this stuff, how they create this beautiful city, what they did for the city, it's very interesting. And now we go to the close to the entrance of the park, and you can see the other park, part of the pond, and you can see the tag with the name of Olmsted Brothers. And we say a little bit more words about the park, and then we return to the overlook. Now you can see fontaine, and it is actually one of two fontaines created due to the efforts of Anthony Spadafora, and I think they really look nice. And if you come here during the night time, you can see that they are lighted, so it is beautiful, actually beautiful sign. So it's not like maybe in some places like Saudi Arabia or Dubai or whatever, they have huge fontaines with music or whatever, but I think this place is maybe not much nicer, and it's our own place. So when it was all created, you can see the big stones in some places around the pond. They were all laid at the period of creation of this park and pond. And you can see the sluice gate, which were used for, taking water when it's too much rain, in the area. And actually, this pond, they use storm water. And there were small brooks. You can see when we went through the bridges. Going here, you can see the small brook. It was all during this period of time. And actually, after Elisha Converse made donation of the land to this city, he put a condition that in case of the fire, he can still use this water for his factory. And they were created Malden Park Commission, which bought for $5,000, which was a large sum of money at this period of time. They bought also additional piece of land. So they bought 3 pieces of land, 2 donated by Elisha Converse and John Slipper, and 1 was bought by commission. And totally the area, this park area, is 40 acres. It's a pretty large park. And you can see also shelter. We have 2 shelters in this park, one in this end and other on the other end of the park. These shelters were created in 1972. So during this period of time, it's in last century, it's at the end of last century, we created a few benches were located in the park and also 2 shelters. But before this, when it was the Great Depression in the country, there were created special commission, and this commission gave money to our city to make some kind of construction works in this park. And the student, former student on Frederick Olmstead and former partner of his company, he worked on this park because he knew very well what was designed at the beginning, and he continued Olmsted job when he works in 1935. So, and he created the overlook, which will be the last point of our excursion, and he created a few stone paths and some kind of other works. And it's very interesting how good he could continue Olmsted job in this park. And also you can see there is the sign. I think we don't go there because it's maybe too far for you. And up the hill you can see the hospital. Unfortunately, it closed now. The famous Malden Hospital. It was the best suburban hospital in Boston area. And it was also created because of the Elisha Converse, who donated a huge sum of money, which is like $20 million in modern currency. And he donated land. And he and his family worked a lot of time to create this hospital. And 100,000 Maldonians were born in this hospital. And when were newborns, they can probably see these trees of this park. And mothers also can enjoy the view when they were in the hospital. And not only these newborns, but all other patients of the hospital. And also what I would like to add. So you can see now there are a very strange maybe, but also nice portrait of Elisha Converse. Now it's a project when people draw different, pictures around the city. You can, if you're interested, you can see his portrait on the, I think it's maybe gas, tomb or whatever, I'm not sure what is it. So you can see it. but in my book I wrote about this man because he also created not created, but gave money for Malden Public Library, for Malden City Hall, which is not now because it was demolished, for Malden Theatre, which unfortunately also demolished. There was a huge, beautiful theatre, for First Baptist Church, for Home for Aged Person, and for many other purposes. He was a great guy, he was a millionaire, but he also was a benefactor. And because of this guy, we have this park. And now we return to Overlook, which was created by this student of Frederick Olmsted. His name was Arthur Shurcliffe. And it will be the last point of our excursion before, if you want to buy a book, so you can do it there. Who was Lieutenant Governor, he was from Malden. And he was also the first Democratic representative in a Congress at this period of time. And he did a lot of job. He was in the Park Commission. So, and because of his efforts that he done for the state and for the city, Maldonians decided to call this Overlook, which was created a few years later by Arthur Shurcliffe after Robert Murphy. And you also can see the flags on the top of this, place. And it's actually a very nice view. You can see part of Great Boston area from this place. And there is a small overlook where there's a bench there. It was also created by Shurcliffe. So he did a great job. And he, as well as two sons of Frederick Olmstead, were president of American Society of Landscape Architects. Actually, this society was created by the eldest son of Frederick Olmstead. And before Frederick Olmstead, there were no science how to create parks. And as I told, we had a few more parks around the city, which were designed by Olmsted and built by his company. It's Bell Rock, very famous park. It, Emerald, Pine Banks, which were like, estate of Elisha Converse, which he also, willed to the city together with Melrose. And, the ground around the Malden Public Library, it's a very small ground, but also it was designed by Olmsted. So this guy did a lot for our city, and in comparison with his other projects like Niagara Falls or Yosemite Parks, it looks very small, but still it's a gem. It's an emerald gem of our city, and we should continue what these people did before us. We need to preserve this place. We need to be careful. So don't throw different trash on the footpaths. Don't leave empty bottles. And when somebody you see the tag that don't feed the ducks, I love the ducks, but the ducks also did a lot of stuff which is not good for the pond and for the park. So you need to be very careful when we speak about nature, because nature it cannot forgive you if you harm it, and it all goes back to you. So if you're very careless, it can be bad for not only for you, but for your children, for your grandchildren, for future generations. So we need to preserve whatever we receive from the not only Mother Nature, but from very talented, very devoted people who worked 100 years ago to create all this beauty.